You know the sound, you know the vibe. It is the big vibe with Tev and Ty. And today, as you see, we have another special guest. We told you a few weeks ago that we'll be getting some experts in to give us guidance and educate us on topics that we need some schooling on. And today we've presented with the amazing Leslie. Not only is our friend, but he is, geez, this guy's accolades could be spoken about for millennia. Exactly. He's our political expert. I'll hand the floor to Leslie to explain a bit of who he is, what he does, and where his interests lie. So, Les, the floor is yours.
Hey, everyone. So let me start by saying thanks to Tev and Ty for making me live my dream of being a featured artist on Spotify. This is where I want to be. I'll be dropping my solo mix soon now. Like
mixtapes,
Park is late for me. But yeah, I'm a PhD student. I'm currently at the Georgia Institute of Technology here in Atlanta, Georgia. So officially adding a third time zone to the big vibe family.
Nice one.
But my true claim to fame is I've known Tyler since we were 6 years old. So that's like
yes, sir.
22 years ago. We went to primary school together, and then we went to high school together, where we met up with the amazing, the legend that is Tev and the rest of the crew. So basically, my big honor is I've seen these boys blossom into the amazing podcast hosts you see before you today.
Sure. That's where you'll get you everywhere.
Including onto our show, apparently.
You know,
I'll say that...
background dirt, I got you.
Thanks for that, Les. He's not the first. Even when we had Lisa and Katya on, they did the same thing. They just gassed us. They gassed us too much.
The hype train is real.
And I swear, if it's not like a prerequisite to joining the pod, you don't have to say nice things to us to be here. We actually invite the people on.
We have to sign those contracts.
It's a non-disclaimer as well. Okay, sick. So Les, in all his humility, also left out that he is a vastly he did say he's doing a PhD at the moment, but he's a vastly educated individual. Beyond that, he studied in started off in the UCT first, moved from UCT, studied in the UK, where Russell Brand was lucky enough to go to the same university as him. Yeah, I did it that way. So he did I think your first master's was in the UK, Les, or was that an honors?
No,
master's.
that was a master's. So,
okay,
yeah,
and then
and then I went
came back
for a second master's in Johannesburg.
Another one.
And now I'm doing a PhD in international affairs.
Okay, so not only are we hyping Les up, we also just want to say that we don't just bring a friend on and claim he's an expert. We brought somebody in that is one of our closest friends, of course, but also that we really believe can add some real value, especially to the topics that we have on the table today. So I think maybe what we should do is we're gonna head right into it with the first section, which we call Around the World. So for those people that listened to episode 7, we spoke a little bit about Liz Truss and her. I think our Instagram focused on the fact that we were here for longer than her, but anyway, and her short tenure in office, if that's what you want to call it. Her short time in it's Downing Street, right? That's where that's their So her short, her short term there. So I think a nice place. Before we even started recording, Les did say we did a good job with that one. So we do like the compliment. But I think a nice place to start this episode will be if we can ask Leslie to, since that episode Rishi Sunak has now been brought into office. So maybe Les, if you could give us a little bit of context on him, like kind of what are your feelings about him? What is the significance of him as the current Prime Minister of the UK?
Yeah, so you guys recorded when Liz Truss said goodbye, but you stopped. Well, you didn't see that Rishi Sunak was appointed the new Prime Minister, so I'll update you a bit about him. So I saw this thing and I couldn't believe it myself, but he's the first Prime Minister who's richer than the monarch. Like, that
You was
my
balling.
mind.
I didn't know he was that rich.
Yeah, he's richer than the monarch.
Jeez.
He and his wife like have over £1 billion or something. So yeah,
Investments or what?
Yeah, some business deals. I think mostly in America. I don't know what they do, but they proper bonding.
Okay.
And then he's the first Prime Minister of color, brown Prime Minister. He's of Asian descent, but he is still a leader of the Conservative Party or the Tories, which kind of makes my life pretty difficult because I hate the Tories, like my own personal politics. Because I hate the Tories, I hate the Conservative Party, pro-business, pro-Brexit, like everything you would expect from a like right-wing party.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of criticism of him, like recently, take quite a racist tone, like questioning if he's British.
Yes, I've seen that.
And obviously compared to the ultimate British Boris Johnson, like people are being very racist in their reviews of him. So yeah, I hate him, but I don't want to fall into that group, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of his credentials, do you believe that he kind of does fit the bill as a PM? Or is it a little too early to tell? You need to give him some time in office to give an honest opinion.
I guess so. I mean, I think his track record, like, proves it'll be much of the same. Like, same as Theresa May, same as Boris Johnson, same as Liz Truss. Like, anything
hopefully
Liz
longer.
Truss had against, hopefully longer. Well, yeah, maybe longer. But yeah, Liz Truss came in, took some big economic risks.
Yeah.
So he'll probably learn from that mistake and like just play things cool. But yeah.
Is he doomed to failure because of Brexit? Do you foresee that there's any kind of policy or anything that he could do that could make him actually pull this thing? Because as you heard last week, what we said was that all the most recent prime minister's biggest challenge seems to be making Brexit work. Is there anything about this guy that you think that he can make it happen, or is Brexit just, in your opinion, just something that's it's going to knock the country?
Yeah, I guess it's where your politics are. Like, to me, any right-wing conservative leader is doomed to fail. Like, Brexit's a bad idea. So anyway, it's implemented. And like, Brexit happened already. So like, what we've seen now is what Brexit is. But I think the real difference is going to be the Russia crisis and what Britain is going to do in terms of electricity bills, those prices going up. And like, I don't know enough to know if there is a good way to possibly deal with that.
Okay.
But I think whatever way you slice it, like, it's going to be a hard winter for him. It's going to be a hard few months for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. And with there being a change in PM, does that mean that it's time for a new election, like time for voting, or do you know what happens when there's a change of prime minister?
Yeah. So the British system is pretty weird because, like, the government can call an election whenever it wants to. I think Boris Johnson was the last one to call one. So they've had one like pretty recently. But the government normally calls an election either when it's doing really well and it wants to prove it can win so it can get a stronger position. And I think that's what Boris Johnson did. And there was like a big victory. Or an election could happen if the government's doing really badly and the opposition party like forces their hand. And like, at the moment, the government is doing really badly, and the Labour Party, which is the opposition party, has called for an election, but not very strongly. And like, I don't have anything to back this up, but my personal opinion is like, they don't really want to call an election now, because it's just going to be like, if the Labour Party do take power, it's just going to be a disaster. So they'd rather keep it on the sidelines, keep in the opposition for now, wait till the winters pass, wait till Brexit settled down a bit, and then see what's up next year. And like,
it's like,
I'm guessing that they're hoping the Tories just tear themselves apart.
There's so many Game of Thrones analogies that could just be thrown into this whole thing. But I think I understand. Like, you're basically saying that you think that the Labour Party wants the Conservative Party to maybe hold that L, because they don't necessarily think that they could come in with the solution anyway. So they're calling for softly calling for some sort of election, only to kind of do the political thing and say, but we did call for an election. But they don't really, again, this is Les's opinion, but they're not really looking for it. Okay, that's very interesting, actually. That's some good context for us. But I think we'll keep our fingers on the pulse with that one. Tev, good luck, my man. It sounds like you got a lot coming your way.
We'll be putting that gas back, bro. That's all I'm saying. I think we can put a pin in that for the UK politics. Another very exciting aspect of politics is US politics. I believe that there's an election coming up. I think it's the 8th of November. So when chatting a bit more about US politics, could you give us some insight on how that looks? Maybe kind of how power is divided in the US, if that's a starting point.
Yeah. So for those of your listeners who aren't familiar, the US system's a bit, well, it's not unique, but it's a bit different from what we used to. So it's a federal system, which means you got a federal government, and then you got 50 states, and each of those states have their own government. So kind of like in South Africa, we've got the national government and then the provincial governments, except it's very different here in the US because the state governments have a lot of power to make their own laws, to pass their own budgets, to do all these things. And in July, there was big news from the Supreme Court when they overturned Roe v. Wade and moved reproductive rights from being a federal issue to a state issue, which obviously gives the state governments even more power. And then just quickly, at the federal level, you got the presidency, and then the two houses of Congress, which are the Senate and the House of Representatives. And if you're a political party, either the Democrats or the Republicans, you ideally want to control all three of those things, the presidency, Senate, and the House of Representatives. And currently the Democrats do, but by like super, super thin margins. Okay.
And I'm assuming the aim is to control those three things, because to make any kind of decisions, you need all three. It's like a majority vote kind of thing, right? Like within those three, two of the three have to agree.
Exactly. Yeah. Like each of those things can pass laws, but there's certain rules. And then if the Senate passes a law, the House can veto it, or like things like that. So to have control of making laws, you need to have power in all three.
Okay. So then maybe what you can do, so now we have like a basic understanding of what how US power is divided, but can you maybe explain to us like a little bit about like what are these midterm elections? Like what's the purpose of them? Why are they coming up? What are the people voting for? Like kind of how does that look?
So as we all know, the president's term in office is 4 years. But a senator has a term of 6 years, and then a congressman in the House of Representatives has a term of 2 years. So you have to have elections every 2 years. And the midterms are what we call the elections between the president's term.
Basically, give us they're voting now, right? You're saying it's kind of like in the middle. What's the significance of this election?
Right. So the midterms are important because they give us a sense of how the people feel about the president's first 2 years. And they also obviously, like, because we vote for senators, because we vote for representatives, like, the power in those two houses can change, which means they tell us how much power the president will have to pass legislation in his or her final 2 years of the term. And these elections are particularly important because they're the first elections we've had since the chaos that was caused by the 2020 election. And as I've spoken about, it's the first election since Roe v. Wade was overturned. So the state politics becomes more important now.
Okay. And generally when there's elections, we always hear about like swing votes or swing states. So is that also something that is a contributing factor in this election? And if so, which are the kind of states that people need to watch out for?
Yeah. So the first thing you should know is all the predictions say that the Democrats are going to lose control of the House of Representatives. This is pretty normal in a midterm, that the opposition party gains control of the House, but obviously it's still bad news. So, like, all the focus now is on the Senate because we aren't voting for the president. It's all about the Senate now. And currently the Democrats only control the Senate by one vote. So there's huge pressure there. And there are three states that we should be paying attention to. Okay. The first is Pennsylvania, where the race is between John Fetterman, who's a Democratic candidate, and Mehmet Oz, or Dr. Oz, as he is more commonly
ominous.
You may have heard of. Yes, a TV star again is running as a Republican candidate. And
Gotta love it.
A political seat. Okay. So Pennsylvania with Dr. Oz is something we should pay attention to. A very close one is also Nevada, where they currently have a Democratic senator, but it looks likely that she will lose her seat. And I can't remember her name, I'm afraid. But she might lose her seat. And the third important race is here, where I am in Georgia, between Raphael Warnock, Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's the current sitting Democratic senator, and then a challenger by the name of Herschel Walker. And that's currently a toss-up as well. So whichever party wins like two of those seats kind of gains control of the Senate, which is a huge deal.
Okay. And obviously you, as you said to us in the beginning of the episode, for those people that didn't pick up, you live in Georgia. So, it doesn't get much closer than somebody who is as interested in politics and studying in that state as you right now. So maybe what you can do for us is just kind of, let's dive a little bit deeper into the significance of this vote in Georgia. Like, I think what's nice about this kind of conversation is it gives outsiders, we always think of America or US, or we always painted this picture of how the US is like the picture of democracy, or, you look at like House of Cards and shows like that. So maybe you can paint us a picture of like maybe the significance of Georgia, and maybe dive in a little bit deeper about Herschel Walker and is it Reverend Raphael Warnock? Just give us some context on that.
Yeah, so I promise I'm not saying this because I'm here, but Georgia is extremely important. And the reason why it's important is because it's a southern state, which means you would expect it to vote Republican, which it usually does. But it also has a huge black population, which, as we know, generally votes Democrat. Georgia is important because it voted for Trump in 2016, but then it's one of the very few states that switched to Biden in 2020. And that was because of a really huge historic mobilization of Black voters led by this amazing grassroots organizer named Stacey Abrams. And remember that name. The second reason Georgia is important is because they currently have two Democratic senators, including Reverend Raphael Warnock, which is very unusual for Georgia. So you can kind of say that it's thanks to Georgia that the Democrats have control of the presidency and the Senate. In terms of the race this year, it's between Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's this amazing, dynamic, young Black man. He was a preacher at the Ebenezer Baptist Church here in Atlanta, which is actually where Martin Luther King Jr. Grew up, and his father and himself preached there. So it's got huge historical significance. And like in politics, Warnock has done some amazing work at promoting Georgia, promoting the interests of the Black community. His opponent, Herschel Walker, was a football star. He played here in Georgia and then a bit in the but he's a huge Trump supporter and friend of Trump, which, as you would expect, means he doesn't have much experience in politics. But he's emerged as this like problematic, pro-police, pro-conservative values, anti-abortion, all the things that you would expect from a Trump friend. But he's had numerous scandals in the past few weeks, including domestic violence, allegations, and it's come out that he's had two women he was having affairs with get abortions. So people have pointed out a bit of irony there. But considering the CVs of these two men, like, you would wonder how it's so close. And I'm still wondering that too, but it really is close, and it could be Herschel Walker who wins this election, which is pretty scary. So definitely keep an eye on the race between Walker and Warnock. That's going to be a hugely important election that we see on the 8th of November. On the state side, we have a race for the state governor, which is kind of like the president of Georgia, sort of. And the current governor is Brian Kemp, who is Republican, very conservative, but not radical like Trump, but very pro-business, very anti-abortion, he's done a lot at suppressing voting right here in Georgia. And he's running against a woman by the name of Stacey Abrams, who you might remember from earlier was kind of responsible for getting Black voters to vote for Biden in 2020. And she's exciting. She's young. She's amazing. I actually saw her a few days ago on my university campus. And obviously she's going to bring a lot of good, but it looks likely at this stage that she's going to lose and Brian Kemp's going to win. The state governor race is important because abortion is very much on the table. And Georgia hasn't banned abortion yet, but everyone thinks that Brian Kemp's just waiting to win the election until that happens, which is a very realistic possibility.
Wow.
Geez, yeah, and I'm curious, as someone that isn't in the States, what is the promotion for each of these political figures? Like, do you get kind of snowed in by how much promotion they're getting on TV, or radio, maybe social media? What are the kind of the outlets that you see a lot of these promos being run on in order to try and get votes?
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. Like, before I came here, I knew political advertising was bad, but I've never even thought it would be anything like it's been. Everything, every time you open YouTube, every time you open Instagram, every time you switch on the TV, you're just bombarded with these political adverts. And I think that's what explains why this race between Warnock and Walker is so close. It's overwhelming. Like every time you see social media, it's always Raphael Warnock is trying to increase your taxes. He's bringing inflation to the state of Georgia. And it's just like, it's not convincing, but you hear it so much and it just sounds so scary and it plays with your psyche in some weird way that it's just, I mean, like, I definitely have a better understanding of why these races are so close having been here. But yeah, it's going to get worse and worse and more in your face, like as we get to this final week of the campaign.
Okay. And maybe another kind of segue or last question that we can do kind of for this section is obviously those that are paying attention to it will know that Elon Musk has now officially taken over at Twitter. I know there was a little bit of a back and forth. It almost felt inevitable when he first put his bid in. There was all this news about him trying to pull out of the bid. And then, yeah, there was just a whole bunch of stuff. But I think now it's official. And you're saying now that the social media and all these campaigns are playing a big part. Do you think something like this will have an effect at all? And if so, what kind of effect would you predict?
Yeah, so our South African friend buying the biggest social media site in the world, like, it's definitely big news. It's huge news. I don't think it'll have an effect on this coming election just because it's so soon. But yeah, he's fired the CEO, fired the CFO, fired the technical director who was in charge of banning Trump and all those guys after the 2020 problems. So he's definitely going to make some changes. He's going to probably bring Trump back. Like I said, probably won't have an effect on this election, but definitely going forward, like to have Trump's hate and misinformation and all those things back in our social media platforms is going to be bad news.
He's a handful.
Even Musk having control of Twitter is bad news because he has such a clear personal and business related agenda that to have him calling the shots in this tool that's supposed to be neutral and free and fair and all these things, it's going to be interesting.
Oh, genius. Oof. Well, that's a lot to digest. I think this session has been incredible. I mean, there's been so much insight. There's been given a lot of pointers that Leslie's advised us on, and it's really something that we're going to be keeping our eyes close to. Yeah, really informative. I loved hearing about kind of the divisions in US politics and getting real world know-how about it has been such a great experience. So that's where we're going to wrap up this section of our podcast. If you are leaving us, don't forget to like, subscribe. You can interact with us on Instagram, TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and don't forget our website where you can find our links to everything.
Yes, sir.
And so that's it for section 1. We'll be heading into section 2 of our podcast. Is the second part of our podcast, which we like to call Getting Athletic. So, as you know, Getting Athletic is all about sports, and having come from such a meaty, very serious and insightful section of around the world, now we're going to get into some fun, and the best place to start is with Leslie's choice. I'm not going to say whether it's a good or bad choice, but his choice of team. And in football, we know that this man is a very die-hard Red Devil. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the floor to Leslie just to give us a quick overview on what he's made of United's season thus far, the integration of a new manager, maybe some of the signings that they've made, and where he predicts the team going this season. So Les, let's start with the manager. Let's start with the appointment of Ten Hag. What do you think he has brought in, and have you seen kind of positive changes in his ideals for the team?
But yeah, so Ten Hag's come in. Like, I must be honest, being in America, I found it hard to watch as much football as I did before. But he looks good. He looks like he's brought his own style. The biggest thing is, like, he hasn't been afraid to make changes, I think. Sidelining Maguire, which I think's great. But the bigger one was sidelining Ronaldo, he seems to have done. Which I also think is a good idea, but maybe I'll get some more resistance about that. But yeah, he looks good. I'm happy with the signings. Anthony has got the flair. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. Martinez looks great. Like, he's
he does.
playing
He
like
does
the defender we needed. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. I must say, like, the only thing I really, because it's been so bad for us for so many years now that I'm still skeptical. Like, I'm still keeping my excitement down. So basically, the only thing I care about this season is how bad Liverpool have been doing. And like, if we finish above them, if they finish ninth, then that's a good season for me.
All is well,
like,
in the world.
I do think we'll finish top 4. That's my own biased opinion.
Okay, fair enough. And are you one of those that are saying that you're focusing on your top 6 where... Well, let me ask you this. How many games are you able to actually watch because of the time difference? Like, are you okay to watch games that have already happened, or you just only want to watch live and you're keeping up with highlights and results?
Yeah, I'll just watch live games. I haven't watched... Do you generally watch replay?
Well, I've actually recently just started, because sometimes there's games on at like 2 o'clock in the morning. If it's a big game, I'll wake up for it. But I'll wake up for a 2 a.m. game if it's a big game. Like I did, I woke up to watch us lose to Spurs last season. Oh, it was painful. But yeah, it hurts. But now I've actually recently started watching some of the games like after the fact, and it's actually quite nice. I never thought I would do it, but what's really cool about it is when you watch it cold, you know the result, so you're able to remove the emotion out of watching the game, and you're really able to just analyze what you're watching. Like, you know, when even if they're attacking, you know they're going to score, they're not going to score, and in that moment you can say, okay, what did the keeper do, or what did this guy do, or what did that guy do? So I'm actually enjoying that part of it. It can be a little bit time consuming, to be honest with you, but I don't know, man. Arsenal's so good this season. Look, we've not been that great the last three games have been quite tough for us, but we're so good this season that I don't mind watching and rewatching and that kind of thing. We're not all as lucky as Tev.
Probably the difference. Like, we still aren't playing well enough that I would be happy watching a replay.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's probably. But yeah, I don't have much of an excuse because, like, normally the earliest games here are at 7 a.m., which, you know, it's not so bad.
Oh.
So I watched the Chelsea game last week, and that was good. I think we played really well. Like, we totally...
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you now. So are you one of those that is there, like, okay, if you watch the Arsenal game, I don't know how you feel as a United fan. I would say that we were unfortunate to lose that game. I don't think it was a foul on Christian Eriksen. I think United did well to take the chances that they did. I think we played better, but obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, so I will say that. But are you one of those that's like United Trey on Twitter who's gassing United up because of this? Oh, we beat Man City 3-2 in the second half. Are you like one of those guys, or kind of what's your feeling on like the top 6? I mean, let's remove the beginning, the shaky starts out the way, like Brentford and stuff like that. Let's remove that out of the way, because obviously it takes some time for a manager to implement what he feels. But I know that you're feeling with the top 6. How would you analyze in terms of that? Is it about specific games, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I'm definitely not one of those fans who gas United up. Like, I'll be the first to admit that it's going to take a long time before we're anywhere close to where we were in the 2000s. But I don't know, this season does look good. I don't know if you remember, like, I think you mentioned chasing the sun in a previous episode.
Yeah.
And like when Rassie came in, he spoke about like focusing on specific matches, like the match against New Zealand, all those things. And it probably isn't, but I hope that's what Ten Hag is doing. Because like against top 6 opponents, we've got 3 wins, a draw, and we were beaten by City. So like,
whacked.
If that's what he's thinking, like focusing on specific matches, get the confidence up, get the playing style right without worrying about winning or losing, I'd be happy with that. But I don't think it's like that, because that's not really how football works, I guess. Like, you expect it to perform straight away. You have to get top 4 straight away. Against Arsenal, we were good. You were good. Like,
it was fair. It was fair. I will say.
Arsenal. I'm loving Arsenal now. I think you got a great team. I don't want to jinx anything, and you might hate me for saying this, but I think you've got a really good chance of winning the league. I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm sorry.
Bookmark this. We're going to come back to that.
Well, then let's ask you, Tev, after your game yesterday against, who did you play? Leicester, who actually have managed to pull themselves together. I will admit they're looking a bit better now than they were at the start of the season. I don't think relegation will be a problem for them, to be honest, moving forward. But how do you feel yesterday, how without Haaland, like what happens? Like it took some magic from De Bruyne. You dominated, and I'd say you deserve to win, but give us your feelings on a game like yesterday.
There's a lot more reliance on Haaland, obviously. The man being the Nordic robot. Everything generally goes through him, and you really just need a final pass, and he'll likely be at the end of it. Man and game management. Game management wasn't a thing in that second half, man. There's so many chances that were given to Leicester, and I think had they started the game off as well as they ended the game, would have seen a different result. But, you know, during the course of a season, you just need a tough win. You need to scrape a win. You need to just get a dirty result, and that was it. It could be one moment of brilliance, like the De Bruyne free kick, whatever it is, grind out the win. So I'll take it. Lots of improvement that needs to be done. I think across the pitch, you get people that generally dip in form, and you see it. Like, I'll take Mahrez as an example of the past few weeks. Prior to the Dortmund game, when it was the leg before that, played Copenhagen, missed a penalty. In the Liverpool game, could have done something, and then the Dortmund game, missing a penalty again. So overall, I think it's just about man management from Pep's side and his entire team. So just ensuring that people are reminded of what's at stake. Also, being in the position, I think, of being second is probably a bit more encouraging than being at the top. So generally it's the other way around, where they're comfortable, they can walk a season. So it's nice to see City in a bit of I'm not even going to call it a trying position, but a position that they're not generally used to.
And I think I will just say I think it's a unique season in a lot of ways, because, well, it's unique because Arsenal's good. Let's start with that. That's unique. It's been a hot minute since we've been good. And I don't want to jinx it. I don't think we're going to win it. Honestly, for me, what I'm looking at now is how winning these games is giving us the gap on our actual competitors for the season. When I see people dropping points, that's all that matters to me. I see Chelsea drop points, I'm like sick. When I see Liverpool drop points, I'm like sick. Those are the things that matter to me. But this is a super unique season with this Winter World Cup being where it is, and how congested it's made the fixtures. So like now in October, I don't know about other teams, we had 9 fixtures. We haven't had 9 fixtures since the 70s. So, you know, like, that's just for some context. So like, if you look at that kind of thing, and also the 5 subs coming in, I think it's a really good change for football. I really do. I think it's now it's not really about your starting 11. It's about minutes on the board. So I think the management is really starting to play a difference. But that Winter World Cup, I think, is making a huge thing. So like Tev is saying now, like you're saying about the City scenario, no team is going to come through this thing unscathed. I don't think. I think having a bad game is different. It's hilarious that Virgil van Dijk can hold his Anfield victory thing beyond City and then lose it to Leeds. I think that just shows you kind of what's going on with that. But Les, I thought we could also quickly ask you one more question before we move on to the comparison question. With the World Cup coming up, what are your feelings? Who you vibing with? We don't have any squads yet, but I think we have a general feeling. I'll say I think Brazil's going to win. But Les, what you got? Who you got? Tell us. Who should we look out for? What's the things?
You guys don't understand how big a question that is for me. Because I will say this live on air. Well, it's recorded, but I will say this in front of all the fans that since 2014, I have predicted the winner of the World Cup before the World Cup started. I predicted Germany, I predicted France. I was in my grave saying that. So this is a huge thing for me. I have to make it 3 for 3. And I still don't know.
Having said that? Nah, you can't cop out. That's a cop out.
Give it such a big hold up and like, actually, I'm still thinking about it.
Okay, so I'll tell you, in 2019, after the 2018 World Cup, I said between Netherlands and Portugal. And
are you still sticking to that?
No. Well, I don't know. I mean, I expected, because it was when Ajax had that amazing season.
In the Champions League.
Champions League with Frankie de Jong, with De Ligt, with Van der Beek, with Depay. And I kind of expected them with Ten Hag, I will say. So I kind of expected them as a national team to build up these years. And then I don't think they were in Euros.
No.
I think they've had a great 2022. I think they're unbeaten this year. Portugal, I thought, because Jota and all those young guys were coming up, but they've kind of also faded.
Bruno Fernandes, you're probably gassing him up.
I think the favorites are Argentina. Like, everyone's saying Argentina, and I get that. Like, they've just won Copa America. Messi's got stuff to prove.
But what do you say?
Got a young. I
see he's beating around the bush here, man. Okay, let's make it simple for you. Give us the top 4. So give us top 4 who you think will be in the same.
In no order.
Maybe a dark horse.
Okay.
Yeah.
France, Portugal, Argentina. I don't want to say England. I'm not going to say England. I can't say England. France, Portugal, Argentina, Brazil.
Okay.
Dark horse?
Oof.
Dark horse, Netherlands.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair
nice
enough.
One.
That's a pretty good assessment of teams there. Yeah. Honestly, I do see quite a few of those coming up. I think I read a tweet. It was in a week. They were a supercomputer, apparently an AI supercomputer, did the World Cup. They played through, and we had Portugal eliminate England in the semis, and it was a Portugal-Argentina final, and Argentina won it, apparently.
Yeah, I've seen like things that FIFA are like fixing it, so it's Portugal versus Argentina.
Like a Messi versus Ronaldo showdown.
The GOAT showdown. I'd love to see that. That would be a great conclusion too.
This goes hand in hand with our conversation last week about these sports and how we can make them exciting. You know what I'm saying? Like if they're cooking it to make it look like that. But Brazil. I'm telling you guys, Brazil. Watch out, boy. Watch out for Brazil. I'm just saying. I'm saying they're back. That's my prediction.
But I promise you'll have my final prediction before the actual thing begins.
Okay, we'll hold you to that. We'll hold you to that.
Did you guys see, just quickly before we move on, did you see that Spain has left De Gea out of their 55-man squad?
No way.
I did not.
They chose five keepers ahead of him. 5 keepers are ahead of him, according to the Spanish national team.
5 other Spanish keepers.
You're number one.
So that's saying a lot, man. Jeez. Don't forget, guys, we will be doing an in-depth special for the World Cup. Before it all kicks off. So just be vigilant for that. I think one other question we wanted to ask you, Les, was having been in the UK and now the US, have you had a chance to go and see any MLS games? And if so, what is the vibe like? So not necessarily just the football, but the entire experience of going to a game in UK versus US.
Yeah, so I've been to one MLS game. I went last year. I saw Atlanta United versus Toronto. And maybe an indication of how it went is I don't even remember the score. I've been to 2 Premier League games, and I remember who scored both, who scored and the final score of both those matches. In terms of the football itself, no comparison. Like MLS wasn't anything to write home about. I think Atlanta United specifically is known for having quite a good supporter base. So I must say there was a bit of a vibe with like drums beating, but it didn't feel like authentic. It felt borrowed from Turkey or wherever they saw their videos of how supporters should behave.
Icelandic clap, like sensationalist kind of stuff, more than anything.
Like very unauthentic, ungenuine, felt very borrowed. You can sense the lack of US soccer culture.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think we touched on this last week where we were saying, so in some of the matches that we've seen in the MLS, you see a lot of fanfare and entertainment value, which isn't necessarily all centered around the game. So say there's pyrotechnics or something that's happening before the game starts.
Maybe shooting T-shirts in the crowd, that kind of stuff.
Confetti cannons, T-shirts, that kind of thing.
Good food.
Did you see some of that? Because we know US sports are big on the pre-game. We know. So for NFL, there's the tailgating that happens outside the stadium. It's like barbecuing outside the stadium, people in their shirts, and everyone's getting hyped before the game. Did you see some of those elements before the Atlanta game?
There was definitely fanfare from the organizers. I think soccer here is different from the other sports in that there really isn't much of a culture here. So I've definitely seen that sort of stuff for the other sports, but not so much for the MLS and not so much for soccer.
Well, then maybe what you can do then is, from what you've observed since you've been there. So if you listen to the previous 2 episodes, I've been watching some NBA, and I know obviously met more Americans here, so I speak to them a little bit about NFL. I've watched a little bit. It's actually a very cool game. Baseball, I don't watch cricket, so I'm not going to watch baseball. But how do you feel? What is the kind of American sport culture surrounding things? You've got the Atlanta Hawks there. Ice Trey himself is there. So what's kind of your observation just on maybe not what's the most important sport in the US, or you can touch on that, but just what is it? Is it very American centric, or how is that climate?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a strong sporting culture here in general. My social group where I'm at is not really into sports, so maybe I'm not the best person to ask. But I think quite important is changes where you are in the country. So being in Georgia, being in the South, football is 100% king. And it surprised me, but that's cross-racial lines. Everyone loves football here, completely football crazy. Atlanta itself has a big black population, and so basketball is big, but basketball maybe doesn't cross racial lines as much.
The way football does,
I would say. which I found quite interesting. And then baseball, I think it's big, but the Atlanta Braves won the World Series last season, which was my big sporting event since I've been here. So maybe much of the excitement has been because of that. But yeah, I think it changes where you are in the country. I would say football is the biggest everywhere, but definitely in the South.
Okay. You went to the MLS, the World Series game, you said?
No. I just saw.
Oh, you just felt the hype there.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty cool.
I do 2 observations about American sports, and
let's go.
Like your thoughts about these. So the first observation is actually a quiz question. So I found this thing of in each state the highest paid public employee. Okay. In 40 out of 50 of the states, the highest paid public sector employee performed the same job. What do you think that job was? So, like governor, what would be a public employee, statistician general, doctor general, attorney general, sheriff.
So two positions are getting paid exactly the same thing, is what you're saying?
No. I'm saying in 40 out of 50 of the.
Oh, there's one position that gets paid the same, or the highest.
The highest,
yeah.
So it's like governor, probably.
Job is paid the highest.
I would say governor or like whoever leads like
politics.
Something like that.
So the answer is the college football coach.
What?
The highest paid public employee. So my first observation is like we don't understand how big college sports are. Like
like March Madness and that kind of thing, but
March Madness. This college football is huge. Like I would say even bigger than the professional sports is college sports. Like University of Georgia won the national whatever last year, and like the whole city just stopped. Like it was a huge thing. So definitely college sports is important in American sports. And then my second observation is because like in all the sports you have a regular season and a postseason. And because you don't have relegation or promotion or qualification to the Champions League or something, I think the fact of the matter is like 90% of the games in the regular season just don't matter. Like, I've heard it said about basketball a few times that they're just
makes
games you can't follow. So like at the beginning of the season, people have an idea who the strongest teams are, and they keep an eye on them. And if they start slipping up, there's still a big chance that they'll be fine. But you keep an eye on them, and then you keep an eye towards the end of the regular season to see who will play who.
And then there's the playoffs.
Like that, like most of the games don't matter. And then the postseason is when like everyone focuses, everyone pays attention.
Okay.
That's been exciting for me. Yeah.
That makes sense. So I think those two things that you just told us, the first one, I think it's quite cool that maybe not that they're the highest paid, like, state employee or whatever you call it, but maybe it's an indication that perhaps that there's a focus in the right space in terms of like youth. And, I think that's quite nice. Maybe if you want to look at it like that. And the second observation you made, 100%, I can tell you, like, even the people that I speak to and what I see, like, these games don't matter. And maybe that's why fantasy football and fantasy basketball are so big, because it's kind of like it draws in and holds that interest throughout the duration of the season. I know, like, the MLS baseball, fantasy baseball, that goes over years, my man. Like, you draft a rookie now for your team in 4 years. I've heard people that do that. That's the kind of commitment you're talking about fantasy here. I mean, I know I'm at the top of the the Greenside Cup at the moment, but I don't know if I could commit to 4 or 5 years of this thing, if you know what I'm saying. But that's really interesting.
Yeah, there's big pull in that. I think, I don't know if it was recent or previously, where NFL, especially for fantasy NFL, they do like a full-on promo, which is pick me, and then they'd showcase what their talents are. So if I'm a quarterback, I'm going to throw it like a K away from a linebacker. I'm going to jump through cars, open windows, kind of thing. So very exaggerated things, but again, it builds the interest in
it. Actually, fantasy is big here. Like I've seen a lot of that stuff.
Okay, well, I think that's a very, very good spot to wrap that up. Les has given us all the context on US sport, and we do appreciate that. And if you have only dropped in for this section, remember, we do all the things. We share the love, we like, we comment. All the fans that Leslie has brought in, make sure you're subscribing to the channel. You're doing all the nice things, and we will see you for section 3. And welcome to section 3 of the pod that we like to call What's Good in Your Hood. So essentially this part of the pod is where we get to talk a little bit about kind of where we're living, how we feel, kind of just spitballing some ideas about things that are not, like maybe influential to too many external people, but they're very influential to us. And we have a very, very well-traveled individual who has joined us here today. He's done a lot of just traveling around in general, but also lived in a few places. So we know Leslie's born in South Africa. He studied in the UK, and now he is studying and living in the US. So we thought maybe what we could do is we could try and draw a little bit of a contrast between the experiences of living in these places. Maybe we can start off with, since you moved to the US as it's your most recent, trip or your most recent living situation, what have you enjoyed, or what has been your favorite thing about living there, or your most enjoyable thing, and what has been the most challenging thing since you moved there?
Definitely sense the problems, which I think is different from the other places I've lived, but like definitely reminds me of home in that you can see the problems with the race, you can see the problems with politics here, and it's just felt very real. And Atlanta is like one of the major cities here, but it's very unpretentious and genuine, and just has this like real vibe to it. It's also got this really chaotic vibe. Tev, I don't know if you've still been watching the TV show Atlanta. But like season 4 opens with like this looting of a department store, and like it's just this chaos. And then one of the main characters walks in and tries to exchange his air fryer or something, and the shop person is like, "Bro, can't you see what's happening right now?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And that just very much encapsulates Atlanta as a city. It's just this like chaotic, but chilled and unpretentious thing. So I'm really, really enjoying Atlanta as a city. The challenges, like definitely a culture shock, definitely different from where else I've lived. I would say the biggest challenge, like it's not very profound, but like definitely Atlanta is a car city. Like you need a car to do a lot of things here. Currently I don't have a car, so that's probably the biggest challenge, just getting to places and doing things. But yeah, I've really loved it here.
And what about like if you were to contrast the education system that you have, like that you're a part of? So we know that you've been to UCT. I forgot the name of the UK university. SOAS, yeah. So you've been to UCT, SOAS, you came back to South Africa, you went to WITS, and now you're at Georgia Tech, if I'm not mistaken. And so those are all very, very different educational philosophies, ideologies, whatever you want to call it. So have you noticed a definite contrast between them? And if so, like what exactly has that been like? What's that experience been like?
Yeah, definitely. I would say like the South African system and the UK system are pretty similar, just in terms of like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like the priority is research, the priority is knowledge. Coming here, the priority is much more about output and about producing commodified sort of like things that you can
Capitalism.
publish, things that you can present at conferences. Like, it's
Okay.
not so much about furthering your own knowledge. But I've enjoyed it. Like, it's definitely given me a different angle to work with in terms of my future career and stuff. Also, the US system's different from the UK and the South African system because the PhD program includes coursework as well.
Yeah.
So I've had the chance to take some courses and see how the things work here. Like, the university I'm at is also pretty different. It's very America focused, very security focused. It gets a lot of funding from the Department of Defense, which is not something I'm particularly proud of. And like, although Atlanta as a city is very unpretentious and genuine, Georgia Tech feels very pretentious and like trying to be what
okay.
it's not. Very light,
Okay.
very
Okay.
not Atlanta. So I'm having some problems with the school, but at the same time, I have been able to like carve out the space for myself where what I bring to the table has been valued.
Oh, that's
I have
great.
been able to work on what I want to work on. So I'm happy, but it's definitely been interesting to see those contrasts.
Good. Oh, that's nice, man. And touching on that, I just wanted to ask about integration. So, Tyler and I have spoken quite candidly about integrating and trying to create some kind of social network in wherever you're staying. And what's that been like? Firstly in the US and then previously in the UK. Did you find it was easy? Kind of what were your tools that you used to build your friendship circles?
Yeah, so I've been really interested in what you guys have been speaking about this before in previous episodes. Like, I would say, I mean, first of all, my situation has been different because I haven't moved with a spouse, someone to be there like with you as you move, as you find a new place together, all these things. Like, I've been not a single man, but I've been by myself on both occasions. But in the UK, when I went for my master's, I went by myself. I lived in student housing, and it was definitely very lonely. And I think you guys both spoke about how you experienced the adjustment period of the first few weeks, few months. And I definitely experienced that. It was quite lonely. Most of the activities at the student house were like geared towards the undergrads and like, which I wasn't. So I definitely went through that adjustment period of a few months. And then after those few months, I had a breakup with my girlfriend who was back home. So that was hard because I didn't really have a social circle there at the time. And then winter hit, and Tev, I'm sorry to say this, but those winters are harsh. Like, it wasn't so much the cold, it was just like the gloominess and the lack of sun. So I had a really hard winter, like both emotionally and just like in terms of the weather. I must say I killed it academically, so that was still fine, and that was something I could hang on to.
Hey.
And then after the winter, it kind of got better. I made a really good friend, and I think that friendship is what definitely helps because it gives you someone to do the social stuff with. It gives you a reason to go out. And I lived in London, which is a great city. Like, I really, really love London. But I definitely didn't have the best time, and I didn't take advantage of it while I was there, which is definitely something I regret. But yeah. Then coming to Atlanta was a different story because I actually have a friend who was here before. So I had her and her social circle, and then she put me in touch with a friend of hers who I actually ended up moving with. So it's a house instead of student housing, and I've got this bit
more
of
personal
community, which has definitely made a huge difference. Like, it's definitely allowed me to make Atlanta a bit more like home. which I definitely didn't do in London.
Okay. And then what I wanted to ask you as well is, since you obviously, I mean, you've always kind of moved, right? So like there was the first move, which is from Johannesburg to Cape Town for UCT, where, let's face it, Cape Town was a little bit of a second city to you. You'd spent so much time there already. You had a little bit of a social circle already, so it was a little bit different. So I'd rather focus on the next two moves, where you moved to the UK, where you just, painted a little bit of a contextual picture for us, and now to the US. But the question that I wanted to ask you is, since it wasn't your first move to the US, right? Did you find that the experience of having moved to the UK kind of prepared you for the experience of moving to the US? So are there certain like little knick-knack pieces of information that you had, like like your cookie jar of like, I went through this when I was in the UK, it helped me in this way when you were in the US? Or are the countries just so different that contextually it didn't matter?
No, I think it has helped. I think I've been very privileged and fortunate to have lived in all these places, and definitely like you get a bit of a checklist in your mind of things you have to do. I would say my move from the UK to the US was notable because like I expected my move here to be harder than it was, because I was prepared for what I experienced during the UK, where things were very hard and I had to
like you had a tougher skin almost.
Yeah, exactly. So like moving here, expecting it to be like the UK, but then finding out it wasn't really. I was able to settle in much faster and form this bit of community much faster. Like that definitely felt good, because I was expecting the worst, but I got the best,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just I've been very lucky in having moved so much.
And like communicating with your family and stuff, was that just you kind of, I mean, it's a different time zone, so, but have you, like, what was that? Is it the same now that you're in the US? Like how has that looked for you?
It's been pretty much the same. Like I speak to them, I'd say once a week, maybe once every 10 days or so. But yeah, we keep in contact. We have the family group. Like that's been pretty chill. And like, as you both know, my family are really close.
Yes.
We've got a really good relationship, but like don't need to communicate about all the things, which is kind of cool. I'd also say, I felt more independent here. Like this is my move. This is what I decided. Like financially, I'm a bit more independent. So yeah, it's definitely my move here has felt like a new chapter as opposed to something else. I don't know.
Nice. It's really cool, man. And I wanted to find out. I know you go back home every now and again, and I wanted to know, one, has your perspective on SA changed in whichever regard that is? And then secondly, having seen or having attained a world view, so everything outside of SA, you've now got a European perspective, because you also holidayed in Europe. I know you've traveled quite extensively there, as well as now living in the US. Do you see yourself settling in either the US, Europe, or do you think you'll end up back in SA? Well, this might already also just be me jumping the gun, but have you given that some thought, like where you'd like to end up long term?
So at the time of recording on this, the 30th of October, 2023, my plan is still definitely to move back to SA. That's definitely where I see myself. It's where I see my work taking me, for various reasons. But I'm very much open to that changing. I don't know how it will yet. I don't know why it will, but I'm definitely leaving myself openness to things changing. I think before I came here, like the plan was never to settle here. And now I kind of see a bit of opening for how that could maybe potentially one day be a possibility. But I'm also very fortunate and privileged because I've got a British passport. So going to Britain is still an option for me. And, you know, settling here is becoming more of an option for me, but still going back to SA is what I want to be doing and what I'll probably do. And yeah, I was back home in June, July. And I loved it. Like I had a great time. The load shedding stuff was horrible, and
I'll know soon enough. Yeah.
Putin's got your back. I wouldn't say my perspective on South Africa has changed. Like what I noticed was really interesting because, like, reading stuff from here about South Africa kind of gives you a different impression of South Africa than when you're there. Like things didn't feel that bad when you were there, even though I know things were bad. But like, I think from the outside, kicking it is very different from actually being there. And even when I was in South Africa, like seeing what was happening here also looked really bad. And then I got back here and, you know, things were okay. So yeah, I wouldn't say my plan is to like help South Africa. That's definitely not what I see myself as. But I see my future in South Africa at the time of recording.
Okay. Oh, that's really, really cool. For me, I think I can kind of mirror what you're saying in terms of like when you're there, it doesn't feel as bad as how it seems and how bad, again, like you said, it is quite bad. I'm not trying to say that the situation is like easy or not easy or whatever. I'm not trying to like, you know, take away from or add to, but I definitely noticed when I was there, it was the same kind of thing. I don't know if it's because of South Africans, that lovely sort of sense of Ubuntu, which we've spoken about several times, that general resilience, the smile on people's face. I don't know what it is, but when you're there and you're in it, although load shedding is bad, there's no other way of looking at it. But when you're there, it doesn't feel as bad as it looks from the outside. And I do agree with that. And the fact that you mentioned America is also very, very interesting in the same breath of air, because, you know, a lot of people have the perspective of America, like looking from the outside of like, you just see school shootings. That's the stuff that makes the news, right? Like school shootings, like very, very hectic racist stories, this almost over sense of patriotism, this exerting sense of patriotism, arrogance, ignorance. That's kind of the way what you see from the outside. And my short time in America, I don't even really count as being there, especially because of where I was in Hollywood. But I would be very, very interested, and it's actually cool that you say that, because I think that just can't be the simple truth of it, right? It can't just be all those bad things, right? It can't just be like that. So yeah, that's super enlightening. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, man, I really enjoyed that. It's so nice to get kind of the platform or at an occasion where you can be this open, this vulnerable with your friends and learn so much about someone that you I think you know so much about, but there's so many like Tyler said, nuggets that you pick up from conversations like this, and I think that's a really great place to round it off. I've thoroughly enjored having you on, Les.
Big fun, man.
Man, you've given us the full you've given us the full roundup about who you are as a person, kind of the direction that you're headed in terms of your career, but also painting a great picture of who you are as a person. And thank you so much for expressing all of that on this platform.
And
for
please do
everyone
come
that's
back.
joined us. We thank you yet again for giving us your time, your ears, your eyes. A reminder on where you can find us. It is on YouTube, it's on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, and on our website. You can catch all of our links on our website, and we will be seeing you at the next one. We did say that you can look forward to a lot more of these special episodes where we're getting insights from experts, and you get to see kind of the great social circle that we have. People like our wives, and it goes on and on and on and on. So from me, I shouldn't say thank you. This was a really great episode to be a part of.
Thank you guys so much. I had a great time. Just felt like chatting to friends.
Yeah, dope one. We'll catch you guys on the next one. And Les, please, we would love it if you join us again. We'll have a follow-up. We'll definitely want to do something like this again, if you're good to do it again.
I would be honored. I've been pushing for this for ages, so I have to come back.
We wanted to build a little bit of a fan base. We wanted to really showcase you, not just in the beginning. We wanted people to see the significance of having you.
And I think that can be seen, yeah. So thanks again, ladies. We can definitely do this soon. Thank you again, everybody. We will catch you next week, same time, same place. Adios.
Bye-bye.